Good evening to everyone. Welcome again to Bet Gabriel. We have a special event tonight. And as I spoke to the guests that we have here tonight, we just met a few minutes before the lecture and try to plan the way we will do the debate, or the argument I should say, about searching for the truth, proving the truth. And I explained them that my goal here tonight is that I would like to ask him a few questions about some of the things that Christianity present in the last 2,000 years, and they themselves do it with their activities. And I would like first, the guest, his name is Danny, right? Danny?
Yes.
Danny, I would like him to first present himself because we do not know that much about him, so we'll give him a few moments to explain who he is, and then I'll take it from there.
Okay, thank you, Joseph. It's really a pleasure to be here tonight and to have this opportunity to speak in front of you. And I only wish that our churches would have this type of attendance in the middle of the week. That's a testimony to the fact that you all are concerned about truth. And I think that's great. And I think that's something that we can share, that we are concerned about truth. We're not just concerned about how we feel when we wake up in the morning. You know, we care about if there is a God and who this God is, and how we can know who this God is. So I just applaud you that you are concerned about these things, and that you're wanting to hear the questions and answers that we both have. I teach at a school in Midtown Manhattan called the New York School of the Bible. I'm not a pastor. But I've been a seeker after truth for many years, and that truth led me to believe in Jesus Christ. Sometimes he's called Yeshua HaMashiach, so as not to be offensive to Jewish ears. And I was searching for truth for many years, and it wasn't until I became a farmer and I had a chainsaw injury, and we lived way at the end of a dead-end road, and the chainsaw bucked back and hit me in the head, and I lifted my hands up to see if I still had a skull left. And when I lifted my hands up, I saw that my wrist was half cut off and the blood was just gushing out. Well, to leave out a lot of details, I was laying in a pool of blood, and suddenly I realized I wasn't alone. I knew, as clearly as I know that you're sitting here, I knew that God was there. And I was filled with such a love and such a joy and such a peace. I knew that what was most important for me at that point was to find out who this God is. And I was always the biggest skeptic in the world, and I always needed proof. And for me to believe that Jesus Christ died on the cross and he died for me was something I just couldn't take on faith. To me, the idea of faith was just unacceptable. My understanding of faith was either you go with faith or you go with reason. And I wasn't about to go with faith. So it took me a long time of searching before I became convinced that the one with whom I had had that encounter was in fact the Messiah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I would like to start with a short introduction before I start with the questions that I have. As some of us know, and those who don't know will find out now, we have three main religions today in the world. It's Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The chronological order is that the Torah was given to the Jewish nation 3,318 years in Mount Sinai in front of millions of Jews that accepted the Torah from God. Christianity is approximately 2,000 years old. The story of Jesus, as our friend just mentioned to us, is 2,000 years old, and the New Testament is approximately a little bit after, close to 2,000 years old, and Islam is just less than 1,400 years old. Today in the world, after Judaism was given in public in front of millions of people, we have more than 80,000 religions and cults started after Judaism were founded. Just in United States alone, you have more than 10,000 religions in United States alone, and cults. Of course, when a normal human being is seeking for the truth, he doesn't have time in 70, 80 years that he lives here to search every cult that starts every Monday and Thursday, right? So obviously, we tonight will try to answer and to ask some of the questions that Christians prove and try to prove to Jews. I would like to debate it. But before I start, I would like to set some rules. And my friend will correct me if anything I say disagree. He has the permission to stop me right there and to correct based on his opinion and understanding at any time. But we are not interested in believing. We are interested in knowing. Comes the Torah never referred to the Jew to become a believer. Yes, it's mentioned in some places that you have to believe in God, of course. But for those of you who came to the lecture that I gave here in the past few years, I have all the sources. If anybody has questions, I will give you the sources. The Torah referred to us and it gave us an obligation to know. You should know I'm your God. You should know I'm the master, there's no other. You should know there was no one before me and there will never be one other than me. Your eyes saw that I got you out of Egypt, and many, many other examples. The way of the arguments today is only based on scientific proof. Anything that me or my friend here will not be able to prove, it's worthless. Because to tell stories, I can start telling you stories from now until I'll be 70 years old. The question, do you want to believe me? It's your choice. We don't want to waste time on things that are open to questions. Only scientific, valid proof that leave no doubts. Like in math, 2 + 2 = 4, you prove it, it's no arguments. What you believe in has a big problem. In science, believing means not knowing. A scientist say, I believe that this medicine will help, nobody will take him serious. But if you say we know after thousands of times that we checked and we saw the medicine always worked, then it's a proof. The difference between knowing and believing, it's a huge difference. We should know a very important part in history. None of the two religions, as I mentioned, Christianity and Islam, ever denied the truth of Judaism. Exactly the opposite. Christians, a very large portion of their religion, which they call our Torah, the Old Testament. None of them ever in history, for many arguments that were done in the past between rabbis and priests in the last 1,000 years, none of them ever came to claim that the Jews never got the Torah in Mount Sinai, because they adopted the Torah and they believe in the Torah, and they just call it the Old Testament because they claim that they have the New Testament, which was given to them later after the Bible was completed. For those who do not know, the Bibles have 24 books until the book of Kohelet. And right after the Bible, they claim there was another prophet. His name is Jesus. And from that moment on, they have what they call the Evangelists, the Evangelion, which are a combination of 4 books, which is, well, you're going to hear soon. But they are basically claimed that God gave another part. So they are now, according to their belief, we have the Old Testament and the New Testament. Everybody understands when a writer gives a book, part A, and the writer gives book part B, and it's the same writer, the same God that gave the book, and they are not denying the identity of this God, right? He gave that book. That means part A and part B has to match. It cannot be that we will find in part B things that completely the opposite of part A, chronological order which is different, names of people that were changed for whatever reason, numbers that do not match the Old Testament, and so forth and so on, which I'm going to give some of these examples. According to common sense, once a person comes into a room, we do not know who he is, and he brings a book for the first time, do not know him. We have to give him the benefits of the doubt that he has something to tell us. and he claims that he got a book from God. It's hard for us to know because this is a story of one person, 50-50. But there is one way to know for sure that this book is not from God. All you need to do is find one mistake in a book. If you are going to find one human error in the book, even if some of the book was given by a divine origin, once you have one human error that cannot be answered, that's the end of that book. Right there. Why? How can I rely on the rest of the book when it got mixed with human error? Nevertheless, if almost in every chapter of the book you're going to find human error, which leaves no doubt that this book can never be given by the creator of the world. And it's exactly the opposite. People like me and you, with certain goals in life, set and falsify books and claim they receive it from a divine origin. You have to be very clever, perhaps a genius, to be able to write a book, to follow the Torah, the Old Testament, and not to make human error, because it's almost impossible to do it. You need to have large knowledge in Judaism. You have to know the Bible, which is, as I say, 24 books. And I'm going to quote a lot of the things that I'm going to say. It's from the New Testament. I mark myself, some of my notes are here. And I would like to ask Danny those questions. I told him before, I did not expect him to be able to answer all the questions. If he does, very well. And if not, we're not running anywhere. We're here. He knows our address. If he has the answers, he can come back. Some of these questions I asked priests in the past, and I'm waiting for many years for them to come back. So maybe he will have more success from those. But this is what took place in the last few years. Now I would like to start with one quote from the New Testament, which gives us a very serious question. In the book of Matthew, chapter 5, I'm quoting word by word from what Jesus himself told his students. Do not think I came to contradict the Torah and the prophet. I did not come to contradict. I came to fulfill. If heaven and earth will be cancelled, even one letter from the Torah will not be erased. Even one little yud. Yud is the smallest letter in Hebrew. One more comment I would like to make right here is that you know the original way, the original text of the Torah, it's the holy language, the Hebrew. No one denies it. The Torah was given in the Hebrew language. And later on it was translated to 70 different languages, include Greek and many other languages. 500 years ago, there was a Christian theologist, Martin Luther, the famous Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King, he called after him, he named after him. And he translated, he's actually the beginning of the Protestants. And he translated the Bible to German. And he apologized in his introduction, and this is what he wrote. It's impossible to translate from the holy language to foreign languages. All the holy literature belongs only to the holy language. Obviously, he did the best he can. If you take 100 people to translate one chapter from the Hebrew Torah, there will be differences in the words. Why? Because some names in foreign languages, it can be translated in different ways. So we have to stick to the original way. But I'm going back to what I started. In the book of Matthew, chapter 5, it says, do not think I came to contradict the Torah and the prophet. I did not come to contradict. I came to fulfill. If heaven and earth will be cancelled, not one letter from the Torah will be cancelled, not even one yud. If one person will erase one letter from the Torah and will come to teach that to others, will be cursed in the kingdom of heaven. This is Matthew chapter 5, and my question to Danny is as follows. To the best of my knowledge, I do not know Christian people today that observe the Sabbath. I don't know Christians that keep kosher like we do. Maybe there is, but I do not know. I do not know Christians that put tefillin. It's definitely not a part of everyday religion for them. So my question to you is like this. Based on your introduction, you called Yeshua from Nazareth, you called him the Mashiach. Later I know that you're going to describe him as the Son of God. And the question that I have to you is like this. If the main figure in Christianity, which everything is around him, which you call him the Messiah, if he wrote in the book which you quote, it's your source, not mine, it's the New Testament, which we, the Jews, never accepted as the truth. We contradict that book. We only believe in the Torah. We never believed, and we will never believe in the New Testament. The reason is, you're going to understand in the next hour that we have, why. But my question to you so far, and that's the first question for tonight, please explain me if the book of Matthew comes and bring a quote that this is the word of Jesus to his students. How is it possible that close to 1.5 billion people today do not listen to their Messiah, to their hero?
Thank you for that question. It's a very good question, and I appreciate the fact that you're asking an important question. You know, not just a question that deals with the translation of a word. And I just want to reaffirm what Joseph has been saying, that there are many areas of agreement between his position and the position which I'm going to present, which I believe is the Christian position. And so several of the things that Joseph said is it's about knowing and not simply believing. In fact, it's a misunderstanding of what the New Testament says. Yes, the New Testament says believe, but Jesus says, if you look at what believe means within that context, Jesus says, I do many miracles so that you might believe. Now, what that actually means in context is, here's the evidence, and I'm giving you this evidence that you might know who I am. So we're both agreeing about the significance of evidence. That's very important. And we also both agree that if the New Testament can even begin to be considered as the Word of God, it must fit intimately with the Old Testament. If it doesn't fit intimately with the Old Testament, something is the matter. So that brings us to the question in Matthew 5, the Sermon on the Mount, and what Jesus was teaching. And let me read you the entirety of that quote. And I'm not going to read off the whole Sermon on the Mount, but notice in verse 17 what Jesus says, do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. Rabbi Yosef was saying, well, how is it that Christians do not follow the law of Moses and they don't put on tefillin? Well, Jesus said that he didn't come to abolish it. The law couldn't be set aside. We know that clearly from Tanakh itself. But what he did do was fulfill it. And the evidence that we have, there's much evidence, in fact, that the Christian looks at, that something would follow the Mosaic covenant. In fact, let me read you a few verses. The first verse comes from Jeremiah 31. It talks about a new covenant. And there are many, many verses in Tanakh that talk about a new covenant. And this one goes, behold, the days are coming, says the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, my covenant which they broke, though I was a husband to them, says the Lord.